You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Glad to have you here as a Saturday game awaits. So we're dropping a day early this week here on the podcast. Colts Steelers on CBS 4 if you're in central Indiana this Saturday, 4:30 p.m., chap.
What happened the last time the Colts played on Saturday?
It's a good question. I remember because I was there. But
30,
I wanted to
33-0.
Exactly. Yes.
I just wanted to throw
the
that
Vikings debacle last year, and Matt's already shuddering on the other side of the desk here. We're bringing up PTSD. We might as well get this out of the way early because I was going to bring that game up later in this podcast, so I'll bring it up now. But it's in relevance to what happened this week between the Titans and the Dolphins on Monday Night Football. The Titans' comeback on the Miami Dolphins was, according to NFL's next-gen stats, the second most improbable comeback of the era. No. There was another game. The Colts were third, actually, in that one. The third most improbable comeback. So that comeback on Monday night by the Titans was more improbable than
down
the Colts
14 with 3 to play, right?
Yes, exactly. Down 14 with 3 to play. So actually, for me sitting there last weekend in Minnesota, after they scored the first touchdown and got the ball back, there was, to me, 100% chance of certainty that was going to. So that was not all that unlikely if you were actually watching the game and you saw what was happening. But I get what they're saying from the sense of statistics wise. But anyway, we don't have to say that anymore. I think Matt's gone catatonic. He's not even going to say anything.
Stat-wise, I mean, I remember not too long ago that the Colts had a 98% chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, I remember that in 2001. Yeah, just had to win one game. Just had to make one tackle of Derek Carr, catch one pass, make one throw. No.
Not soil yourself in Jacksonville.
Be able to block one or two on pass rushers. Yeah, and what a great start to this Colts Blue Zone podcast.
Matt needs to put a little subhead, there will be rabbit holes that we go down.
And please stick with us through the first 4 minutes of this week specifically because it is difficult to do. Hey, and maybe even a little bit longer than that because if we're bringing up last week's game before we really dive into this week against Pittsburgh, what we saw last week, chap, in Cincinnati was not what the Colts had been the previous couple weeks. Everything seemed to go wrong. They were torn apart by the Bengals offense in unique ways. And the defense couldn't stop them. The offense couldn't get much going at all. A lot of things came to a head in this game that at least from time to time the Colts had struggled with this season. But like I said, it all jumbled together. It resulted in what we saw last weekend in Cincinnati.
All of their flaws were exposed. And in the past it had been, well, this area hurt them, but these other areas covered up. This is one where... And I don't mean it as a smack, but it will be. But Gardner Minshew wasn't a problem last week for the most part. It was when Matt Gay misses 2 kicks, and it was the first time since I believe his rookie year that he missed 2 kicks of any kind in a game. And people were pointing out that maybe the whole. I went back and I thought the operation was okay.
Looked fine to me.
It looked fine to me. So it's like Shane Steichen said, that was a game that none of us wanted to be a part of. Well, you put it behind. We've talked to players in the locker room. They know it was a massive missed opportunity. They find a way to win. They're tied for first in the AFC South with the way everything else played out. And it kept you from really, really fortifying where you are. Everything's still there because of the way everything else played out.
Right. I think that's an important point to emphasize, Matt, that even though the Colts laid an egg last week, they still got help from other teams. And that's what we focused on a lot last week, that the Colts were getting a lot of help from other teams in the AFC. And they still did, with Jacksonville losing, with Houston losing. And even though Cincinnati beat them, they're still technically behind them in the playoff standings, even though they're tied at 7-6, because it's a multiple-way tie, and there's a lot of things that go into that. So the Colts still find themselves in a position where they, quote-unquote, control their own destiny for the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Stepping away from this game is, even though they did blow an opportunity, man, to go to 8-5 here just really would have separated them from the pack, because you've got 6 teams right now all cluttered up at 7-6, which means you have all these multiple tiebreak scenarios going into play. You've got 4 games left. But I will say, I was looking at some of the playoff scenarios for the Colts. If they win out, they have a greater than 99% chance of getting it. Now, I don't think anybody in this room believes the Colts will win out. it's one of those things that could happen because it's been kind of a weird season. Things could go. If they beat everybody but Houston, 71% chance of getting into the playoffs. If they lose to the Steelers and win out, 87% chance to get in. If they lose to Atlanta and beat everybody else, 96% chance to get in. Lose to the Raiders because of an AFC applications there, even though they're not in the race, 88%. Right. So 3 of their last 4 games against AFC teams, those are the key ones. They need to bang on and win those games. Yeah,
it's the Atlanta one's the least, quote-unquote, least important.
Because of conference.
But exactly.
Right. Because when you have all these teams clustered up, that conference record becomes super important.
That's why the Colts are 7 right now, because they've got a better conference. Right. They in Pittsburgh have 5. They're 5-4 in the conference. And then because of that, then you go to common games between the Steelers and the Steelers. I really think Saturday is an elimination game. I really do.
I agree.
I think one of these teams. I think the Colts can still get in. I think 3-1 gets the Colts in. I just do. But if Pittsburgh loses, their schedule is tough. So I think this is one where you say it's not winning in, but losing out. I think that's pretty realistic.
And those percentages that I ran down, those are just exclusive to the Colts games. That does not factor in what other teams do, because you could have another team, one of these 7-6 teams, go on a losing streak, and then that opens the door for somebody else
or
as well.
A winning streak that puts you.
Or
Denver's got an easy schedule, so and Buffalo's got a brutal schedule. So it's so much better to be talking about this and conference records instead of saying, if they lose one more, they move from 7 to 5 in the draft
which
position.
Is what we did last year.
We've done it, and it's interesting, but it's just not what you want to be doing.
Hey, you could be Carolina or New England right now and just eliminated already from the playoffs and already looking to next season and what you're going to have to do. So it's much better to be in this position.
Tyquan Lewis this week for the Colts named the Ed Block Courage Award recipient for the team. He's suffered season-ending patellar injuries in both the last 2 years, 2021 on the best play of his career, and then in 2022, which was more of an innocuous play, but it's been very good. And this year, he has 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 10 quarterback hits, which I believe is his career high. Tyquan has always been solid when he's been on the field. He's been exactly what the Colts want of him, is a rotational defensive line player who can play outside, play inside. He has a role when he is healthy. Like he wears the scars on his knees for you see the evidence of why he won this award every day that you look at him in the locker room, and from his teammates' perspective, certainly the most deserving recipient of this award.
Yeah, it's about overcoming. And he's overcome the last 2 years. I remember, and I think the reason we talked to him going into 2 years ago before the first patella, and he'd been inconsistent and just not quite. And he really went into how he focused on the mental aspect and getting his head together, I guess, because he had gone through some, I don't want to say depression. I don't want to make too much of it. But he really got himself together internally, and we saw him playing really well before the first patella. And as I said, he's a guy you just pull for because he's really a great guy. He does things the right way. He's never whined about, why me again? He just sort of deals with what's in front of him. And as you mentioned, he's not a starter.
Nope.
But there's not much of a drop off when you put him in there, and he's really good in the nickel because he gets pressure, and it's just really good to see. And I believe he signed a 1-year contract again last
2 years.
So here he is again.
Yep.
And in my mind, he's one of those guys, those 5 or 6 guys they've got that you try to re-sign.
I agree. And with Tyquan in this sense, Matt, like you don't just need 4 good defensive linemen. It's not like the offensive line where you have your 5 guys and they're set for the entire game. You need really 2 units of defensive line, whether that's 6 guys if you're in a 3-4 or 8 guys if you're in a 4-3. That because those guys are real workhorses to have to explode the way they do and
that's the
fight
only position
offensive
they do
linemen. Exactly. It's a very unique. Every position in the NFL is unique, but the reason the defensive line is unique is how much fight goes into that position on a play-by-play basis, rather, in order to be successful. So
yeah, offensive linemen, they play 100%.
Yeah.
and Michael Pittman may play 95%.
Yep.
If your defensive line rotations are working, Buck plays 78, 80%, and that's where it's at. You seldom see a lineman on defense playing 85, 90%.
Very rare. And so Tyquan has his role. It's an important role. And like you said, I think since he's staying healthy, I assume that he gets some kind of contract offer from the Colts this offseason.
Good for him.
I mean, Chris Ballard has given him a contract when he's been injured, and you don't know what's happening.
They obviously like him as a player and as a dude.
Right.
I mean, in the locker room and everything. So
as they should.
He'd be a good one to keep around just because you get some production from him, and then he just helps your depth as well.
Well, this week he is going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 7-6, ranked third in the AFC North right now, which is maybe the best division in football. If you look all around, you can make an argument just the top-heavy NFC East with both the Cowboys and the Eagles, but after that it really drops off. So, like 1 through 4 in the AFC North have been tough outs at some points of this year, especially 1 through 3. And they've been 7-6. And if the playoffs started today, they would be in. They would be in above the Colts at the 6th seed because of where they are. But they have lost 3 of their last 4. They are not playing well, Chap. And so this is probably the good time to get the Steelers. NFL is a lot about when you play teams. The Colts got the Ravens at a good point early this year before they really got on a heater and found out what's working for them. Maybe they're getting the Steelers at the right time too. The fact that they've lost 3 of their last 4 games.
Well, and again, it's how long's Tomlin been the coach there? Is it 15 years, whatever it is? Never had a losing season.
Never had a losing season.
They simply find ways to do what they have to do to stay relevant in contention, and here they are again. They weren't an offensive, they weren't much of an offensive team before Kenny Pickett got hurt, and now with Trubisky, it's just again, we've talked about this. So much has the Colts have had so many injuries, nothing cries out that or points at that more than Richardson and Taylor have played 1 snap. Richardson's missed all these games. JT's played 6 games, or he's missed 6 games. Yet here they are, and that's where Pittsburgh is, and it's just which team can now say not lose it because you've got to find ways to win it. But it's really kind of amazing that the Steelers, as bad as they've been on offense, they're right there, and they probably look at the Colts the same way the Colts look at them.
Yeah, I one of my favorite stats that I've ever heard, I think it was on the Pat McAfee show earlier this year with the Steelers, and this wasn't like 2 or 3 games into the season. This was like 6 or 7 games into the season when they were, 5-2 or something at that point. And the stat was, in every game, they had been outgained on offense, but they were still like 5-2. They were still one of the best teams in the AFC North at that point. And that speaks to like a team that can turn it on and find a way to win. And that's what they've done under Tomlin. Like you said, they have found ways to make the best out of what they had. And that goes to what he's established there in his 15 years as a head coach.
It's just hard to see how they've been so bad on offense.
Yeah.
But that starts with erratic quarterback play. The running game's been, I think they're like right with the Colts, 110 some yards a game, whatever it is. So, again, this is one where you just, again, I think both teams look at this, make the quarterback do things. The Steelers want to make Minshew do things, and the Colts have got to make Trubisky, carry a lot of the load and not let them get Harris and their running game going. And you're back at home, which the Colts have not had a great record at home.
Nope, to be honest.
So, but 3 of the last 4 at home, it's got to start Saturday. It just has to.
Kenny Pickett is out. Mitch Trubisky in a quarterback with Mason Rudolph, the backup there in Pittsburgh. So they're on their backup quarterback as well. Another thing going against them, which is what has led them to some struggles in last week in particular, losing to the 2-10 Patriots, I believe it was last week, and then losing to another 2-10 team the week before. I don't know. Was that the Panthers?
It was Arizona.
Arizona. Excuse me. Yeah, you're right. It was the Cardinals. So yeah, not feeling
at home.
At home. Both games at home.
Yeah, both at home.
Yeah, right at Old Three Rivers there. The confluence of the Ohio.
What's it called now?
The Allegheny.
Pittsburgh.
It's not even Heinz Field anymore. It's some other company. I don't know. Like it's some Pittsburgh. I don't know.
Money talks.
Exactly. It does. You have iconic names like Heinz Field. That even before that, Three Rivers Stadium, like I said, but like you said, it's It's all about
Acrisure Stadium.
Yeah, I'm never calling it that. I promise you that. That is not something that's going to roll off the tongue all too well.
It says formerly and colloquially known as Heinz Field.
Here we go. Colloquially, as Heinz Field. Yeah,
so people there still call it Heinz
Good
Field.
for that.
I bet they do.
They had the big ketchup bottle that was like on the side of the stadium. Yeah, I remember.
So you guys can name it what you want. We're calling it Heinz Field.
Kind of like the Hoosier Dome was for a lot of people.
Yes.
Still the Hoosier Dome.
Even when it was the RCA Dome.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes. So the last meeting between these teams was, in fact, just last year, a Monday Night Football game where the Colts fell behind 16-3, but then took a third quarter lead, 17-16, before then things came apart in the fourth quarter, and they ended up losing that game to the Steelers here during the home stretch, the what's it called, the Jeff Saturday era of Indianapolis Colts football. One of those losses.
How many eras have we been through here?
We've been through too many eras.
Yes.
Matt points out this was a Jelani Woods game, an 8-catch for 98 yards game that we still haven't seen any sort of production. And at this point, don't hold your breath for any Jelani Woods this year. It's
red shirt season, I guess.
Completely out the door right now. But we'll also mention that something we heard in the locker room this week for some better news, Chap, on the injury front that you heard.
Yeah, I was talking to Reggie Wayne. Whenever Reggie's available on during the week, we talk to him because he's great.
Reggie.
He's
Come on.
Reggie. But guys in the locker room, George Brimmer from Anderson, he said they talked to Juju Brents, and he said he expects to play. Or either he expects or I'm going to play, whichever it was. Now, normally, players are guys you don't go to. But we talked to Juju last week when he practiced. Was he limited last week? I don't remember. But he practiced, and we all talked to him, and I didn't think he would play last week. He'd missed 6 weeks, whatever,
a bunch.
with that quad.
I think, 5
This
or 6.
is different. This is different. He's had time, and they need him. Darryl Baker's played well. I think he's played very well.
I think so, too.
Actually, last few weeks he's really played.
I think Jalen Jones has sort of fallen off a
he
little bit.
hit a bit of a rookie wall,
right?
Yeah,
Which
I think so.
What was he, a 7?
Which is fine, but he also faced Mike Evans and DeAndre Hopkins,
He's
like we
faced some
pointed
really good receivers,
last
right?
couple
Those
weeks.
are those are big walls on their own right.
Exactly.
But no, getting him back would be huge. I think that's what they're kind of hoping for with JT. You know, I don't think he plays this week. I think he's been out there maybe I've not seen him this week yet.
I haven't seen him in the locker room.
Braden Smith, I don't think he plays.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath.
But the idea is stay relevant, stay in contention, and boy, for the last game or two, get these guys back. And then in the playoffs, you just don't know. But getting Juju back would be huge. It's been such a tough rookie season for him, from the broken wrist in college to the hamstring in training camp, and then he plays, and then did he tweak the hamstring again, and then he comes back, and then the quad. So
quad, yeah, not knee, quad.
Getting good players back is always a bonus.
And when your top 2 draft picks that you made this year, Anthony Richardson and then Juju Brents, like it's been disappointing, obviously, for both of them. If we look back on this year, obviously still plenty more to be written for Juju, but if it comes down to it that he's limited for the rest of the year, I mean, those are the 2 guys that you want to see, you want to develop the most.
You drafted them early for a reason.
Very much so. So, like,
and you look at the draft class, they've gotten really good production from Josh Downs, going through sort of a quiet period. Blake Freeland,
better than expected, I would say.
Holy smokes, where would they have been had he not? Now, he had a tough go at left tackle, but at right tackle, he stepped in and played pretty well for Braden Smith.
Yep, not too bad. So that's where they are right now. The Colts wore their 1956 throwback uniforms last year against the Steelers. They will do the same this Saturday against them as well. Anything that you can do to try to snap an 8-game losing streak to Pittsburgh, dating back to, what is it, 2008, 2005? It was somewhere back there.
They've won 3 times against Pittsburgh since they moved to Indy.
That's it. Just 3.
And the cute little trivia thing is they've only won with a quarterback wearing number 18. Mm-hmm. Peyton Manning twice, and fans would probably know who the other one is. Who was the other quarterback wearing 18?
I do not recall.
It was way back in 1984. I know that.
Mike Pagel.
Okay.
Mike Pagel.
Okay.
So, but they're like 2-18 since then, and it's just remember some of those games when Roethlisberger would throw for like a zillion yards and 6 touchdowns. It was
Antonio Brown would catch 27 balls.
Would go off.
Just destroy them.
So, but again, it's just one of those that it's like every team has somebody. For so long the Colts just whipped up on Houston and Tennessee.
And Tennessee, both
for the
of them
most
had
part.
their eras, yeah.
And then they always had trouble with Jacksonville. This is one of those where
some things never change.
I know. That's a rabbit hole we're not going down.
Nope, no intention.
Until maybe the first round of the playoffs when they could be there
in Jacksonville.
Right? Oh God, you will not be going.
You'll tie me.
I will call management and say, Dave's busy that weekend. I don't know what he's doing.
Anybody else?
Say, we'll put you in the guest room, Dave. It's very nice there.
And then the door locks behind him, and they slide water
we'll slide
bread and
some
water
food under the door.
Thank you.
But Pittsburgh's just been a tough out for him. I don't know whether it's funny how whenever it's Pittsburgh, they play such an aggressive, physical. They do, but some teams aren't physical. Every team, watch them play. Zaire Franklin's a physical player. Michael Pittman's a physical player. But the Steelers have that defense, and one of the reasons that you can have a crappy offense is you've got a defense, kind of like last week with the Bengals. They had a defense that was like top 2 in takeaways, and Trey Hendrickson can have 5 or 6 plays, maybe more than that last week, and they just make up for offensive deficiencies. And these guys with Highsmith and Watt, They just change games.
And with Watt and Highsmith, they are both in concussion protocol. They were both limited in Tuesday's practice earlier this week. You can follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone for some more news and notes throughout the week for injuries and updates through there. It has been rare this year that players are able to come back from a concussion the very week after they sustained it. But it has happened a couple times. The one thing that both of those guys have going for them is the concussions they sustained were on Thursday night. So the Colts have a short week. The Steelers still have a long week because they played Thursday night instead of this past Sunday. So both those guys get an extra couple of days to feel better. But go ahead, Chap.
Yeah, and we'll monitor the injury report today, tomorrow, and with concussions, you just don't know. Because a couple of weeks ago, Ryan Kelly practiced all week, and you thought,
he practiced in full, I thought, on Friday.
Right, and he practiced on Friday, and then he didn't pass that independent neurological thing. So to say they would be game time, we may not know until Friday, if then, whether those two guys are available. It's a little different with road games where the Steelers will have to announce if these players made the trip.
Right.
So if they make the trip, I think there's a really good chance they play.
You would certainly assume so. The T.J. Watt situation is one that's coming under a bit of scrutiny this week.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I'll explain it why Chap thinks it's crazy if you're unfamiliar. The very first play, I think it was, of the game last week for the Steelers against the Patriots, T.J. Watt takes, I believe it was a knee to the face, basically, an Ezekiel Elliott knee to the face, knocked him out of the game for a couple plays, and then he came back into the game with a more tinted visor on. And as anyone who has spent a second thinking about concussions in the NFL knows for the past 10, 15 years, one of the clear signs of a concussion is sensitivity to light. So I'm just spitting facts here. I'm not trying to insinuate anything. I'm just telling you exactly what happened here as he gets hit in the head, goes to the sideline, needs a more tinted visor to come out and keep playing football for the rest of the day. And then the next day, on Friday, comes in and is complaining about concussion symptoms. That is the timeline.
It's just a bad look for the Steelers.
It's a very bad look.
In the league.
Yes, and the league, I saw today a headline that that there is a investigation or whatever, and I think that's standard operating procedure for concussion reporting, is there typically is an investigation as to whether things worked out well. So that's not unique to this situation. It's just a unique situation, I think, that is more questionable than some others are typically.
It's a little bit, it's different, but reminds me a little bit. I mean, Gardner Minshew last week came up a little bit wobbly, and we never saw him
100%
get pulled out of the game with an independent neurologist on the sideline saying, "Hey, this guy's showing some stuff. Maybe we ought to pull him out."
Good point.
And nothing really happened with Gardner. Now he, after the game, basically just kind of shrugged it aside. But during the game, I'm like, gosh, I think he got up a little wobbly there.
I couldn't tell if he got up wobbly or if he just sort of stumbled. Somebody said maybe this is an unathletic guy trying to get to his. I don't know, but normally if there's any question at all, they pull these guys out
and take a look.
Right.
Yeah, even if there's nothing there, it's usually take a play or two off, go to the tent, do the eye test, whatever, and then go from there.
Right. And that did not happen. I remember that was definitely a play in that game because you see him stumble, and then immediately you're thinking, is Sam Ellinger going to have to come in here?
Warm up that shoulder, Sam.
Exactly. Offensive rankings for the Colts and the Steelers as they get set to face each other this Saturday. Steelers are 27th in the NFL in scoring, only 16 points per game. Colts are still in the top 10, ranking 8th, 24 points per game this year. Passing yards, Steelers are among the worst in the league. 28th in the NFL, averaging less than 180 yards through the air per game. In today's NFL, less than 180 yards through the air. The Colts are averaging 226 yards per game. That is good for 17th. Rushing yards. We say they're a rushing team, and they're a good rushing team, but they're still middle of the pack in the NFL, which just speaks to their offensive struggles this year. They are 15th in the NFL in rushing, 112.8 yards per game. Colts are 16th, right behind them, 110.5 yards per game. The Steelers do average 4.2 yards per rush. Colts are 4.1 yards per rush, so very comparable there.
And I do think with the Steelers, I was reading their media guide, and they said since week 9, their running game has been one of the top ones in the league, and I think there's only been one game where they didn't get like 130-some yards.
Okay.
So they've... in the last few weeks, they've really found something there.
Okay, that's important to note for sure. Big plays, the Steelers have 42. The Colts have 46, so similar there. 11 rushing, 31 passing for the Steelers, 9 rushing, 37 passing for the Colts. Again, very comparable numbers between those teams and the splits there. They got a few more big plays rushing-wise, excuse me. And the Colts defense has given up quite a few big plays this year. 54, I'm sure, is not one of the best in the NFL with 8 rushing, 46 passing on the year. Other side of the ball, the defense. The Steelers this year are ranked 7th in the NFL, giving up only 19.2 yards per game, what you'd expect from Pittsburgh. Colts 29th, allowing 25.4 points per game. So two units that are very much on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Total defensive yards, the Steelers are still... Is this right, Matt?
I don't think that's not right.
I don't know,
because plug the number in.
We'll table that for a second. Passing defense, because that was what last week was.
That was the Bengals number right there.
Yeah, exactly. So passing defense, the Steelers are 21st in the league. Colts are 17th, both averaging about 226 yards per game. And rushing defense, Steelers also 21st. Colts are 26th in yards per game.
They've got to get this run defense.
They do.
Tightened up. They just have to.
Exactly. They were better last week, but
was it 111?
Yeah. The Bengals found something with the screen game, which is what we were talking about just a little bit before, Chap, as we were coming in. Like they made that their running game, their big play running game for sure, because they had those 3 plays for 120 yards, just gashed them over and over again. There,
it's still not great for the Steelers, but it is better than that number. 21st in the league, 344 yards per game.
Okay, there you go.
On total defense.
Okay, so there we go. Slightly better than 32nd.
Yeah, 32nd.
That was
definitely is not right.
Like we said, that was last
week's
number.
Not nearly 400 yards a game like
the
Bengals were giving up.
No. So the Steelers defense better than that. They are plus 10 in takeaways. Very good number. 21 takeaways.
Biggest category in season-long success rate.
Yep.
Makes a big difference when you can turn over the other team. It doesn't matter how many yards you give
Bengals,
up.
they had 19 takeaways last going into last game.
Right. The Colts are only plus 1. It's always better to be plus than minus, like I always say. But 21 takeaways, the same number as the Steelers.
20 turnovers.
But it's committed 20 turnovers, which is not what you like to see. And those have led to other teams' success all year long.
Steelers and the Colts both top 5 in turnovers.
Yeah.
On defense. So
takeaways.
Or takeaways.
Right. Yeah.
And they got one last week? The Colts, Ronnie Harrison.
Yep. Ronnie. Let's go. But E.J. Speed might be back this week, so we might see a little bit less Ronnie out there.
And that's a good thing.
Exactly. No disrespect to Ronnie.
Has played exceptional all year.
Yeah.
They need E.J. out there.
And E.J.'s a great sideline-to-sideline player. Like I said also before we started off, I think there's a good chance that the Bengals, those 3 screens that went for 120, 130 yards, do not happen the way they do if E.J. Speed is playing in that game. Because he's a good sideline-to-sideline pass defense linebacker.
The first one doesn't happen if they call the guy for
blocking him in the back.
Kenny Moore in the back.
Yes, there's that too. But alas, that is not meant to be. On offense, the Steelers look like a backup quarterback. Mitch Trubisky, 463 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in this season, playing in parts of 4 games. Had one start, which was just last week, as they started the post-Kenny Pickett era, at least for this year.
Yeah, here's for that, Dave. Just week 4 at Texans, Pickett left with injury, so Trubisky played. Week 8 versus Jags, Pickett left with injury, so Trubisky plays. Week 13, Cardinals, Pickett leaves with injury.
Yeah.
Trubisky plays. Then last week, Pickett was out, so Trubisky got the start.
All right. Najee Harris is the workhorse running back, 690 yards on the ground, averaging 4 yards per carry, has scored 4 touchdowns, also 24 catches.
He's like, to me, Joe Mixon. Mm-hmm. If you're not careful, he will carry a game. He's that good of a running back.
Jalen Warren, 612 yards, 5.6 yards per carry, is also running it pretty well, too. 3 touchdowns for him, 42 catches, more the guy that can come in and be your change of pace guy. So they've split it up a good deal between both of those two and have found success in the running game, going back and forth between them. Kind of more along the lines, if you saw like the real balance between Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines of the past couple years here in the Colts, in those few games where we saw both of them really be effective. The Steelers have found a couple of those games this year to get the right balance between both the power back, the thunder and lightning, so to speak, and have been one of the best teams in the NFL running the ball the past couple of weeks, as Matt pointed out just a bit ago. George Pickens, the leading receiver, 49 catches this year, 767 yards, has 3 touchdowns and 16 receptions of 20-plus yards. He's a guy that can beat you deep for sure, that you have to pay attention to on a play-by-play basis. Deontay Johnson, 37 catches, 475 yards, 3 touchdowns for him, 7 receptions of 20-plus yards.
If you're a head coach or an offensive coordinator, wouldn't George Pickens just drive you crazy?
Well, yes.
When you see the talent and what he can do, and from all indications in Pittsburgh, he's just a pain in the butt.
Just a head case.
Just
Last week, just yelling at people on the sidelines, like completely losing his cool. Yeah, Pittsburgh's lost 2 games in a row. They're frustrated.
Right.
But what you're doing is not the right way to go about things.
And we talked to the Colts, after that draft, and they did not. He turned them off with his personal visit, and
George Pickens, yes.
George Pickens, yes. And it's like, no, we're not gonna mess with this. Mm-hmm. So sometimes talent is not enough to make you a great player. But having said that, Pickens can take the top off and really hit with those shock plays.
Yep, he can be a game breaker if given the opportunity. Just hasn't had the opportunity as much this year. But like you said, the threat is there for sure, and you would much rather have them try to run down the field with Harrison Warren than you would
4.2 a carry instead of 30.
Exactly.
Right.
On one play or 2 plays, whatever it might be. On defense, the Steelers' leading tackler is Landon Roberts, 86 tackles this year. Safety Mika Fitzpatrick, still there.
He's played forever.
I think so.
Feels like it.
Yeah, exactly. And he's made a couple big plays against the Colts, too. 64 tackles for him. Safety DeMonte Kazee, 56 rather, tackles this year. Sacks, TJ Watt is the going away leader and is second in the NFL, in fact, with 14 sacks. Another Watt coming to Indianapolis with ill intentions. Next up, Alex Highsmith with 6, and then Marcus Golden with 3. So that's why we stress that both of those top 2 sack men are in concussion protocol as of now in the middle of the week. Don't know how that's going to play out, but I know that how it plays out is going to have a big impact, Chap, one way or the other, on how this game turns out this weekend.
Yeah, and that was mentioned to Gardner Minshew, and you prepare that they're going to play.
Yep.
You just have to. Again, there's 4 or 5 players that have the capabilities of just turning a game. He's done it time after time, and the Boses and Khalil Mack and these guys, they just make plays, and you hold them down for 45 plays, and on the 45th or 46th, they get a strip sack, and then you're going the other way. And when you got an offense like Pittsburgh that's struggling, the last thing you want is to give them a short field or free points or whatever. So, yeah, we'll be checking the Watt High. And again, Highsmith is quality as well. So it's really pivotal on whether these guys play or not. But if they play, you gotta block them. You gotta limit what they're going to do damage. Limit how much damage they create.
The Steelers are tied for 5th in the NFL with the Colts, in fact, with 13 interceptions this year. But it's come from a slew of different players because no one has more than 2 picks on the Steelers team. So it's not like you avoid one side of the field. There's not Revis Island here. I would suggest not throwing it to Minkah Fitzpatrick and having him return it 100 yards for a touchdown.
What was it? Was it 100 yards?
I don't know. It was close. It was near the end zone, that's for sure. It was definitely in the red zone.
Brian Hoyer? Who was that?
That was Hoyer, yeah. Hoyer came in that game in Pittsburgh for an injured Jacoby Brissett.
That the Colts still should have won.
Yep, that Anna Vinatieri missed a field goal late that I don't think was a very long field goal.
And he missed it.
Yeah, that was just a miss. 100% a miss. And I was there. That was less than fun in the locker room, both talking to him and talking to Jacoby Brissett, who was less than enthused about talking about his injury, to say the least.
That was a sprained knee.
Yeah, exactly.
And that kind of did that Colts season in there. Because Jacoby at that point was playing pretty well enough, to get them going.
Yep, they were 5-2, I think, at that point that year. So yeah,
that was the game. Also, I remember that Hasselbeck came in and just got pulverized over on the Pittsburgh bench sideline. And nobody went to his defense. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but that was another game that they should have won against Pittsburgh, but sometimes you find ways to lose. And a lot of times the Colts have found ways to lose against Pittsburgh.
Their playoff picture, the Colts are 7th in the AFC playoff standings with 4 games remaining. They play at home against the Steelers, in Atlanta on Christmas Eve, then at home against the Raiders, at home against the Texans. There are 6 teams, as Matt pointed out earlier today, with 7-6 records in the AFC. The Colts, the Steelers, the Texans, the Broncos, the Bengals, the Bills. And if you were to ask yourself before the season, Bengals and Bills would be the 2 favorites, obviously. But right now, there's a jumble here.
Cleveland's 8-5, so they're sort of right there, too.
They're right above them, and the Colts were just had that opportunity last week, and really, I can't even say they were a hair's breadth away, but they could, because they weren't that close last week. But they had the opportunity to be 8-5 and just let it slip through their fingers.
One of the crazier things about that game is, they got down 14-0, and you're sort of thinking, oh boy, well, here we go. This is their bad game of the season. Then all of a sudden, they have this 1-minute section that gets them even back at 14-14.
Yep.
And you're like, oh my gosh, maybe these guys are going to do it again, and then the second half, just forget about it.
Nope. And if you look at all of these 6 teams here with these records, you figure maybe 2 of them would get in the playoffs. And so it depends on what happens down the stretch. And Chap, as you pointed out, opponent records is going to be important because the Bills have a murderer's row down the stretch.
They got Dallas this week, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. So it's not easy for them. The Broncos, it is an easy schedule. Like the Colts, it's a last place schedule because they were last place in their division last year. The Texans have to play the Colts. The Colts have to play the Texans.
Going to be massive.
That could be a win-in-your-in scenario right there between these teams. And again, we're talking about playing teams at the right time. The Colts played the Texans at the right time earlier this year before they got going really in the middle of the season.
Before the quarterback got going.
Exactly. And who knows what it's going to look like at the end of the year.
And that might have been the Colts' only easy win of the season. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I can't think of it.
Yeah, it was back in week 2, and they got those early touchdowns from Richardson, and then Minshew just kind of coasted them the rest of the way there. Everything else since then has been a real struggle.
It's been hard,
yes,
as you would expect from this franchise. Not easy. That is the abnormal weekend when you can sit back and relax in the late third and fourth quarters all the way to the finish line there. So that's going to be a continual thing that we look at every week here. And the good news for the Colts is, like I said, they have games against the Steelers, the Raiders. They have games against the Steelers and the Texans here down the stretch.
3 or 4 at home. That's what you want.
3 or 4 at home. Even though the Colts have played better on the road this year, I think you would still
last
rather.
Week excluded.
Yeah,
correct.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't have to talk about that anymore.
It's all set up there for them. So if they don't make the playoffs this year, then they've got nothing but themselves to blame for it because they had their opportunity to do it.
Yep. Injuries. We'll touch on that on Tuesday's walkthrough practice. Braden Smith did not practice with his knee injury. Jonathan Taylor did not practice with his thumb after still recovering from surgery. Jalen Jones, the rookie corner, was limited with an ankle injury. And Juju Brents practiced in full in Tuesday's walkthrough. Like Chap said, he's saying this week that he's going to play in the locker room. Alongside DeForest Buckner was in full with a back injury, tight end Will Mallory with a rib, EJ Speed full with a knee injury. So it could be worse, could be better, but certainly could be worse than what the Colts are putting on their injuries early this week, injured list early this week. For the Steelers, did not practice Najee Harris on Tuesday. Quarterback Kenny Pickett, who's out. Landon Roberts, their leading tackler at linebacker, a groin injury, did not practice. And their guard, Isaac Seumalo, with a shoulder injury, did not practice. Limited action defensive tackle Keanu Benton with an oblique. Defensive tackle Cam Hayward, who's wrecked a couple Colts games in the past with a groin. Linebacker Alex Highsmith with his concussion. Linebacker TJ Watt with his concussion. And safety DeMonte Kazee with his ankle injury. Full participant in practice, cornerback James Pierre with the shoulder. So they have a couple of pretty important players who are on that list that we're going to have to pay attention to for the rest of this week. Chap, what are you looking at there?
Just looking at updates from practice today. We don't know full limited, but Brent's, EJ Speed, and Jalen Jones are practicing.
Okay.
No JT, no Braden Smith. They're just not going to play.
I don't think so.
They're not going to play.
No way. There's no way.
And again, why don't you put guys on IR now? Because that's the end of the season. So if you don't need the roster spot, which we've talked about this, people say, well, why did you? Well, they miscalculated on Braden and who else was it early? It wasn't Jelani, but guys who missed extensive time. Now you put them on IR, it's 4 games. Now you can come back for the playoffs, but they just don't need the roster spot. With the way you can maneuver practice squad players, you just don't need the active roster spot. So it's get these guys healthy, and then hopefully the last couple of weeks they come back and make a difference. Mm-hmm. It's always great to get quality players back anytime, but boy, in mid-December, late December, that's just a super boost.
Yep. Colts host the Steelers at 4:30 p.m. The game airs on CBS 4 here in central Indiana. Our coverage starts at 3 p.m. with Colts 360, but that's going to be a heck of a day on CBS 4 here in central Indiana because it starts with Indiana, Kansas. At least you hope it's good if you're an Indiana fan here. At a noon, I believe it is, or maybe 12:30, and that goes right into Colts coverage. Colts 360, Colts Blue Zone pregame show, NFL Today. Colts here on CBS 4 taking on the Steelers. The Colts are, I believe, they were a 2.5-point favorite in this game, from what I saw before we came on here.
I actually checked this week, Dave, and yes, that's what it was.
Good.
2.5-point favorites.
And I think the number was 42, so they're anticipating something along the lines of a 22-20 ball game, which like these are the numbers that we say like every week.
every week.
And like I said, the ceilings in Vegas are plated in gold for a very good reason.
Amazing,
because they get it pretty darn close to accurate, and there's always one or two plays that are important, which brings me to the Army-Navy game this past week. I don't know if you guys were watching Army-Navy.
I didn't watch it.
Okay. Well, we were watching, like, Army-Navy, like, almost always hits the under. And there were some late points in that game. Like, it was, like, 13-3 throughout most of the game. They scored, like, that many points, and then they scored like 17 points super late, and it hit the over on like the last play of the game because there was a safety on the last play of the game.
Oh,
like,
they lose a bet on a safety.
Yeah,
safety.
Yeah, so like literally I think it was Navy was trying to punch it in for a touchdown. They were on the 1 yard line, or they were inside the 5, and they tried a quarterback sneak on 4th and goal, and they were stopped at like the 1 yard line with like 5 seconds left. So Army just takes the snap from the 1, skittles around in the end zone for a bit, and takes the safety. And they're able to win the game because if they had like fumbled the snap and Navy had scored a touchdown, they win the game. But if they gave up 2, it wasn't a big deal. But it killed the over/under for some people. The over/under was like 27.5.
Those people out there know what they're doing.
Exactly. That set it from 27 to 29, and just a brutal way to lose. A bad beat if there ever was
one.
It's
called the backdoor beat, is that what it's called?
Yeah, backdoor cover
wow,
sometimes.
Backdoor cover,
exactly.
Right.
But yeah, the ouch, man. Ouch. What a horrible way to go down if you're a betting man.
I always enjoy the Scott Van Pelt segments on the bad beats.
Yeah.
And they always show guys on the sidelines, maybe more in basketball games, and it's a meaningless three-pointer or miss, and these guys are cheering or not.
Yes.
And you know which way those guys bet their money.
Yep. 100%. So, always interesting. Every play up until the finish.
And the NFL, they love that. They talk about the gambling and all this, but But that is such a part of what drives the interest in all pro sports leagues.
Huge. All right, let's get to our score predictions for this week. I'll go first. Matt will go second. Chap will go third, and we'll end with some discussion as well. So then I put it on myself to go first, and I have to come to a conclusion here quickly about what I'm going to say.
So you hadn't thought this through.
Exactly. Not too well. I hadn't, but I have no faith in the Steelers' offense with a backup quarterback. So I do think the Colts win this game. I'm just trying to figure out how it goes in my head.
Over under 42?
Yeah, I think I'm going with the under for that. I think the Colts win. I think this might be their second most comfortable win this year after that Texans game. It's still a game in the fourth because it's low scoring, but I still think that they get the win over Pittsburgh here. I think it's going to be something along the lines of like 20-10. We'll give them 20 points, and they hold Pittsburgh to 10. It's one of the defense, I think, answers the bell after last week, which was really nasty. And at least you'd hope so. You'd hope that they would answer the bell.
Pittsburgh's first play should be a screen.
Yeah,
just
right.
To see if the Colts are paying attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See if they learned anything from last week. But yeah, I don't think the Colts offense is anything to write home about, but it's enough to win this game, and the defense carries the load to get them to 8-6 on the year, and in better shape than most that everybody else here in the AFC wildcard picture. So Matt, what do you think?
I'm going to say that the Colts able to win the turnover battle this week, but it's still not. I don't even think they're going to break 20 points. I'm going to go 16-13. I think they've just had a real hard time getting the ball in the end zone, in the red zone. So I'm going to go 16-13 with the Colts kind of rebounding from last week's performance.
Chap.
I'll one up you. I wrote down 17-13. I was so sure of the. I'm so sure of the under like I was when they played Cleveland.
Right.
What they scored 77 or whatever it was,
35 or whatever.
So, but no, I'm not going to have trust in this offense until they can run the ball week to week, and I'm just talking 120 yards a game. I'm not talking the 170 or whatever. But until they do that, again, for the last 5 games, they've averaged 62 yards rushing. They can't win that way. But I think the defense. And as little as I trust the defense, I think they do find a way to get pressure. I think they will limit the run game and just don't give up the 2 or 3 turnovers because this team's not that good.
Yeah, not equipped to do it.
17-13, and then if you'd have told anybody in the Colts organization 3 games to go, we're going to have you 8-6. What do you think?
100% they take it.
They'd have bought it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So
before the words were out of your mouth, they would have said yes.
Right. So, and that's what's cool. And it's not being homerish. It's cool to see a team deal with everybody's. Now, Justin Herbert's now out for the season. Quarterbacks have dropped like flies. I mean, top-tier quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. To see these guys do what they've done, somehow find ways when everything says they shouldn't. Go 8-6, and let's see what these last 3 weeks bring.
I do think it's unique that all of us are picking the Colts, in spite of the fact that the Colts have lost to the Steelers 8 times in a row here. But to be fair, a lot of those were a guy named Roethlisberger throwing the ball,
and Antonio Brown, and
and Le'Veon Bell, out of the backfield. So
they had that stretch where it was like 6 touchdowns, 500 yards passing. Antonio Brown just goes off.
Yep.
They don't. That's not this. Mm-mm. And if you've watched Pittsburgh. Yes, it's Pittsburgh, and yes, it's Tomlin's never had a losing record and all this. To lose back-to-back games at home to 2-10 teams, that's really difficult to do.
Mm-hmm. It is. And yet they managed to do that right now. So they need to pull themselves out of it more than the Colts need to pull themselves out of it right now.
Which team do you have most faith in doing it?
Exactly. And we've talked about this here a couple times, establishing culture like Shane Steichen is trying to do, and how valuable a December that is meaningful football can go along the lines in achieving that. Pittsburgh has a culture there, because Correct. Tomlin has been there for 15 years. They've had bumps and bruises along the way, no doubt. It seems like from time to time there's drama in Pittsburgh, but they're able to come through it and get out the other side. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that culture is not the absence of struggle. It is getting through it and not letting it eat away at a season like it did last year for the Colts is a great example of how things completely spiraled out of control. Now, they were not a good team, but they also did not have the culture to snap them out of what was happening to them down the stretch.
To make a play against Minnesota, to stop the bleeding in Dallas in the fourth quarter.
Exactly.
Once things went bad, there's
no coming back from it. Yeah, in Pittsburgh, when things go bad, they can come back from it because they have the people in charge who set the right tone and set the right example, and that is why Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. He's had a couple 8-8 seasons, but nevertheless, never had a losing season there in Pittsburgh in his 15 years. And that's one reason why Pittsburgh, they take their guy and they stay with their guy. It's Mike Tomlin, it's Bill Cowher, it's Chuck Noll. It goes back, it. And that's it. Yeah, in the past, 50 years or however much exactly. I don't know exactly what the number is, but they have consistency. They have people at the top of the organization who know who can evaluate good leaders and put them in charge and let them make mistakes and get through it. And that's that. It's that type of scenario that the Colts weren't before and are trying to be this year under Shane Steichen and trying to build toward something like that in the future.
That's one thing. Culture. I mean, it is something. It's something. And I kind of flash back to 2002 when they transitioned to Tony Dungy, and they go 10-6, and they just got boat race in the playoffs, 41-0 at the Jets. But you established something with Dungy. I realized the talent level was with the Colts was just incredible, but the positive reinforcement this team will get and can get. Making the play, I don't care what happens in the playoffs. I really don't. But to get a wild card spot after where they came from last year, they blew it up with leadership, except for the GM. And what this could do moving forward when you get your so-called top players back next year, when you get Richardson, you get Taylor, and you get guys healthy again. I don't think we can overstate the importance of finishing this, finding a way to get in the playoffs, and then whatever happens, happens. But you've really put a foundation down to move forward.
And starts this weekend, a Saturday afternoon game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4:30 p.m. once again, airing in Central Indiana on CBS 4. Colts coverage begins at 3 o'clock with Colts 360, moves into Colts Blue Zone, the NFL Today, and then kick off, like I said.
You like Saturday games?
4:30.
I mean,
that's fine. Yeah, it's fine. It's going to be a busy Saturday for me just because everything is going on that day. Like I said, Purdue's playing big game against Arizona.
I stay in my lane. You don't stay in your lane.
No, exactly.
You have a lane? You must not have
my
a lane.
lane is sports. It's all of them. That's my lane. I have to do high school on Friday nights, and the Fever just got the number 1 overall pick in the WNBA draft. So, Caitlin Clark's likely coming here to Central Indiana. I have to know a little bit about everything here.
You know what's cool is and I mentioned this last year, when the Fever got Boston, you've got these 3 franchises that have got young foundations.
Yep.
And boy, you had the girl from Iowa.
Yep.
That is, it's all about can you see something? And we talked about this with going through all the quarterbacks that this team did. When you finally got that guy that I can see us doing something sustained. And that's what these three franchises have now with this guy, with this, and then Halliburton with the Pacers.
No doubt. And for the Colts, next opportunity to continue moving in that direction is against the Steelers on Saturday afternoon. So for Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. We appreciate you listening. You can read all Mike's work online, fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Again, combined online, we are at Colts Blue Zone on Twitter. And we'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone Podcast.